Like to call the March 8th regular meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wait a minute. All right. I think the whole band's together. We'll go ahead and start roll call.
Hampi,
Here.
Schlauer,
Here.
Ward,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Kimball,
Present.
Carey,
Here.
Stephenson.
Here.
All right, ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentation. I believe we have a special day to recognize.
Yeah, today's special day is International Women's Day, March 8th.
Women's Day.
Yeah, did I say that?
Wednesday.
Oh, International Women's Day, sorry.
Oh.
It's a global day celebrating social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality. The first International Women's Day gathering was in 1911, supported by over 1 million people.
Very nice. Very nice. Ladies, thank you for your service.
And it might have been on a Wednesday, I don't know.
Might have been. Amendments to the agenda this evening.
There's none.
Any declaration of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits?
No.
No.
Shouldn't be. Okay. Then we will move into the consent calendar.
Yeah, item A is the minutes from the February 22nd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
All right. Any discussion? If not, I'd look for a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented. I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Kimball,
Abstain?
Davis,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right, citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on this evening's agenda. If you're wishing to comment on an issue that is for a planned future meeting, we would ask that you would hold it until then. Is there any citizen issues this evening? All right. Seeing none, then we have no unfinished old business, correct?
That is correct.
And that will bring us to the majority of the evening, and that would be our public hearing. We will go ahead and open up the Post Falls Title 18.20 zoning code update.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager with the City of Post Falls, presenting the alternative compliance proposal. The request is for you to review and recommend approval of the requested amendment to Title 18 pertinent to twin homes. Before I go into it, I want to talk about zoning and what the purpose of zoning is. You know, a zoning assists the management and development of real property. Is based off the character and land uses of structures and their fitness within a particular area and their uses. It's a common form of land use regulations. Consideration is given to conserving the value of the property and encouraging most of the appropriate uses and protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So typically, you know, you look at zoning and it works everywhere. You know, for the most part, you look at Euclidean areas, you know, your sprawled areas, curvilinear streets. You also look at some of your downtown areas, lot and blocks. And so a lot of times zoning works in a lot of areas. And I'm going to go into more details through this, but at times you get anomalies where things occur that unpredicted or a property owner may not predict of what could have occurred in the past. What kind of brought this to light is in this area happens to be an R2 zoned area. So what had occurred is right here on West 18th Avenue, at some point in time in the past, there was a decision to vacate that 18th Avenue. So what they did is they transferred that kind of the road obligation to Warner Road. Well, the form of Warner Road isn't a road, it's an alley. But you can see by the pictures of the roofs, you have residents that have access off an alley. Well, it kind of throws a kink into our zoning because our blocks are typically 300 foot deep. When there's alleys, you have an alley running through, and their frontages are on public streets, and they're supported by alleys. Or you have some curvilinear street system where you have 120 foot deep lots, and it's very obvious where their frontages are. So what had occurred, as you see here, these two lots, they meet our minimum lot dimensions for R2, but not necessarily our bulk emplacement table in Title 18. Staff got together and talked about it, and we didn't necessarily want to propose something that went citywide for this instance like this when it's an anomaly, rather propose something with an alternative compliance type matter, which is based off a code at a meridian, where maybe when these little unique things happen, we can deal with them under certain conditions, and I'll go into that. Kind of some of the details on the matter here, and kind of some what we were looking at is comparing. This right here is a representation of the case in hand out there, and I'll go back. You can look out there, the current built environment is mostly single family homes. There is some duplexes and twin homes in the area, but the majority of it is single family in nature. And in this case, I think the person proposing development wanted to complement that to the best of their ability. So, and that's why they put single family homes to the west. Being R2, they could have configured this and built more like this with the twin homes where you have a common lot line running down the middle, and that's what I tried to represent here. Although the blocks couldn't support that, I went with what the minimum would be on this. But you can see here within a 50 foot, you could have a shared common wall with what looks like a duplex across the street from other single family homes. What they desired to do was to do a common wall on the rear and front other single family homes with other similar features, but still be a twin home. Another thing to point out, which I may bring up again later, is if you looked at the minimum lot size for a twin home, which is the 25 by 96, you would yield about 1,000 square feet. If they went by this configuration, they would end up with 1,315 square feet of green space of nature. So you get a little bit more green space on the right versus the left, but you can't do the right. And where this culminates, as you can see here, is our bulk emplacement table. You can see here in this case was an R2 townhome or twin home. The only side that you can share a common wall is on that interior side, either 0 or 5. Those are your options. And the minimum lot area is 2,400 square feet. So they could meet everything on this except for that 0 to 5 element that couldn't. So then staff has their hands tied in looking at infill development in this area. So hence the mentioned alternative compliance and what would that look like. And so what we're proposing is that it would be allowed when only one or more of the following conditions exist. So you're looking at topography, soil, vegetation, or other site conditions where making full compliance is impossible or impractical. The site involves space limitations or unusually shaped lots. And I would argue that potentially 1 and 2 could apply in the instance at hand that applied this, that due to some past decision created some unusually shaped circumstances on this when the intent was not to develop any more intense than the underlying zone. 3, safety considerations make alternative compliance desirable. So potentially someone could come in and want to propose something safer for an area, but because of code, we can't do anything with it or have any flexibility. This would allow us a container to entertain that. There could potentially be other regulatory agencies or departments having jurisdiction or requiring design standards that conflict with the requirements of the title that would allow us to entertain it. Potentially the proposed design included innovative design features or architectural or site designs that promote walkable mixed-use neighborhoods. Additionally, additional environmental quality improvements would result from the alternative compliance. Once again, back here, So on the right, not allowed at this time, because there's no mechanism. And in looking at the environment with everything being single family in nature in the area, staff would contemplate that the proposal that you see on the right would actually probably blend in better with the neighborhood, still meet the intent of the code and meet the intent of the underlying zoning. Actually meet the intent of the underlying zoning. Actually, before the meeting, I looked at an old zoning map from 1979. This has been zoned that since R2 since 1979. It explicitly says in that zoning map that R2 was meant for density between 1 to 12 units per acre. Now, I don't know why everybody built single-family homes in the R2, but usually when you zone, going back to that intro, you zone with an intent to create something in the future and allow some development of some intensity. And so, and it said and it specifically said multifamily residential 1 to 12. So looking at the evaluation of any proposal, we'd be looking at, like, is strict adherence of the requirements not feasible? In this case, that wouldn't, because right now we can only allow it on a side yard. The alternative compliance provides an equal or superior means for meeting the requirements. So that's what we'd be looking at, is are they proposing something that's equal or better than what would be attained by code itself? And at the same time, meeting the intent. The third one is looking at the alternative means will not materially be detrimental to the public welfare or impair the intended uses and the character of the surrounding property. And that's where I kind of brought up repeatedly, looking at, I don't know if I have it here, but I'll go back. I would argue in this case that the images on the right are more complementary. I don't think that the structures on the left would be detrimental, but I do think sticking similar looking structures next to similar oftentimes are more compatible and complementary. So that pretty much wraps up kind of where we're going with this. Is there any other questions?
I got a quick one.
Yeah.
So you had highlighted in the table TH, which is,
Yep.
is that also townhomes?
Yeah, townhome. So a twin home
Is a type of townhome?
is a type of a townhome. We go in our definitions table and actually explicitly define the difference between a twin home and townhome. But yeah, twin home is more or less a 2-unit townhome.
Okay.
Could you go back to the house, the pictures?
Mm-hmm.
So the 4 lots in 50 feet, that would be permissible in the zoning as it is now?
Yes, you can, if you had a minimum of 192 feet between 2 streets and you had a 50-foot platted lot width, you could yield 4 lots in that 50 feet. But as, like in this case, as you get less than 50 feet and you're zoned R2 and you're trying to meet some of the density parameters for R2, you would see someone attempt to ask something to similar to what's on the right. And odds are you would have on one side of the street a single family home, and I wish I actually put the picture. I can maybe go back. What ends up happening, I didn't put the picture in here, but a little bit further to the southeast of there, what you end up having this depth lot. On one side of the street, you have a bunch of single-family homes. On the opposite side, you end up having just a bunch of fences going along there. So you end up not having complementary infrastructure where you have a house on one side of the street and a house on the other where they're kind of looking at each other. Mm-hmm. We're kind of used to that, whether you're in Montrose, Fieldstone, or anywhere else. You have a house across the street from where you live, and you're not looking at a big, long fence.
Okay, thank you.
John, you mentioned infill, and most of the lots north of Warner are pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the target area is to infill that space there?
This code isn't necessarily to target this whole area. It's more or less, this was a unique circumstance, which most of the blocks are either in the form, throughout the entire city, is either like what you see here between Compton and Pine, or between 18th and 19th, where you have two streets, and no one would utilize this code section for majority of the city. There may be unique areas, though, that things occurred that you would utilize this code section to, once again, you're meeting the intent of the code, and you're trying to propose something equal or better than what would have otherwise been proposed. Now, I do predict, because 18th was vacated, we've removed multifamily as an option for the R2. It wouldn't surprise me if depending on how much land is purchased, there may be a unique circumstance. Potentially, maybe 18th gets pushed through again, but that is an awkward depth to go from an alley to more or less an alley with no east-west road. So something unique was more likely going to be asked, whether it's a cottage home development, maybe a form of a mix of twin home and cottages, I don't know. That may be handled, though, at a time of a subdivision, too.
Mhm. Other questions for staff?
See, Field may want to say something.
Well, I know another aspect of this is if that was a duplex lot, would that be allowed?
Yeah, I'm glad that Field brought that up, because we actually did talk about this quite a bit, and I brought it up too. Once again, same to the similar area that I mentioned to the southeast, you actually have duplexes on the exact same lot. So you could do this as a duplex, renter occupied on this exact same lot. It meets the minimum spacing for that. So the irony is we would allow something with renter, but we wouldn't allow the same product being owner occupied. Seems like a little bit of a disconnect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? No? All right. Thank you, sir. We have
None.
hearing none, no need for rebuttal. Any last minute questions for staff, legal? No? Okay. We'll go ahead and close it out and open it up for comment. Thoughts? As commissioners, how do we feel about this? Ray?
As someone who may get to use this code in the future, I think it's great when a city or jurisdiction allows for the opportunity to have some flexibility in their code for special things like this that can be handled administratively. I think it cuts down a lot of staff time. I think it cuts down a lot of, waste of having to take something like a special thing like a variance to planning commission or city council. And I think it's a really creative way to help some infill happen. And, this is basically targeted at areas that have been part of the city since, or been subdivisions since the 50s or 60s. So it targets infill, I think, which is a huge benefit. It's one of the things that our comprehensive plan asks us to focus on, is to look at infill as a priority. And I think this is one of those little code changes, little tiny tweaks in code that allows for a lot of good flexibility, and I think it's a great thing.
Any other thoughts? Ross?
Yeah, I think it's a good common sense solution to give the staff flexibility to help people when it makes sense for them and for the city, so great idea.
Nancy, Kevin, anything else to add?
I'm good.
No,
Vicki, James?
I don't have anything
No,
to add.
no, I agree. I think it's a good idea when it's just a small tweak like that the staff can make that decision without it, doesn't have to be a big major thing for the applicant or anybody else. That can be taken care of at the staff level.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's no other comment, I would look for a motion then.
I would move to recommend approval of file number TA 0003-2022, Title 18 Alternative Compliance Ordinance, and move it on to City Council.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further comment? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Ampe,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes,
Stephenson.
Yes.
All right, next item on the agenda this evening is administrative and staff reports. Looks like we've got something there.
We may have to take a quick minute to load it up on that computer.
Okay?
It is in the
Do we have background music
agenda.
that we could play? No? Okay.
He goes, no.
John could
It's on the
sing.
website.
I don't know.
We want that.
Everybody look away.
Star, 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 star,
No,
star.
it's no joke.
Hey, Stephanie, can you sign me into the, what do I use? Password is password.
She's not gonna tell you.
Just use my login? Okay.
Twinkle Toes 32.
Twinkle toes.
It is stars, so you can't see it.
How'd you know?
Yeah. Used to be on your jersey.
Long.
Okay.
There we go.
So this is the first I'll present off of a staff report. Normally I present a PowerPoint. But really what we're going over here is the Idaho code requires Title 6718 of the Idaho statutes requires that each year that a staff report be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council regarding the impact fees and their expenditures. So in the staff report, you see a summary here of the 2021 projects. You see that approximately 3 million were collected in impact fees and about 2 million, or roughly 1.8 million of the impact fees were spent on roads, parks, and public safety projects. In 2021, you can see that for the roads, they funded the Highway 41 widening, the Spokane and Prairie project, traffic control and pole line on, traffic control at pole line and Cecil, traffic safety at Mullen and Cecil. And that total money for the 2021 for roads was about 814,000. I'll try to zoom in a little bit here on that, so it's easier. Parks, they spent about $1 million, and theirs went on to some land acquisition, phase 1 of the sports complex, and Black Bay Park. Public safety, and it looks like they spent about 36,000, and they just transferred some funds and spent some money on the study that was recently adopted. Did want to go over, because of COVID and various reasons, we hadn't gone over some of the projects in the previous year. So you can see in 2019, there was about 1.1 million with some expenditures here. Looks like 50,000. See expenditures. Sorry. So yeah, for the roads, 49,000 was spent on the impact study in Spokane and Prairie. Parks, they spent about 1.8, and this is their list of parks projects they did in 2019. And then for public safety, you can see the 184,000 that was spent on those items listed. 2020, for roads, you can see that 98,000 was spent on those projects. Impact fee study, Spokane and Prairie. 1.2 was spent by parks, with 66,000 being spent on public safety. Looking at the history, and this is kind of important to look at, as you can see how the fund seems to get quite large over time, but there's a reason with that. So, and if you notice when I was going over some of the parks projects, you know, they're spending about $1 million to 1.some million each year because of they program their projects in. Roads is a little difficult because road projects are really expensive. So, and I know that they have some projects online this summer and probably next summer, they're going to be spending some money. So you're going to see the total amount start decreasing as those road projects start being taken. But they're very expensive, and that's what you see. You see the balances increase over time, some expenditures, and then they'll drop, and then they'll revenue, and then the savings will go up with that. Is there any questions with the impact fee report that was presented to you or the data within it?
So basically on the roads then, is what you're saying is it's kind of like they're saving up to get enough money? That's why they're not spending it as parks or something. They're just kind of waiting until they get enough in the coffers to then spend it.
Yeah, on some really expensive projects.
Okay.
They try to do the best they can at getting match grants to expend the funds to be responsible to the taxpayers and get the most for the bang for their buck. And they're also required by state code to expend funds collected within every 8 years. So they do look at their capital plans and their projects and look at spending those projects, spending their money responsible on those projects.
So is that 8-year time frame? Is that why Cecil has to happen this year?
I don't know if that's exactly why that has to happen this year. I
Okay.
do know that both Bill Melvin and Rob Paulus do look at their capital projects and their transportation master plan and look at that through a very responsible lens.
I don't really have any other questions. I just got one comment. I think this is probably goes to, it's sad there's not more people here because everyone wants development to pay for development, and that's exactly what this is.
Right.
You know, there's $13.7 million in funds out there that have been paid exclusively at building permit time from people building homes, and so developers and builders. And this is the good and the bad, right? So we get a whole bunch of money, but it comes later. And it takes a while for us to build it up, for us to build the things the projects that need to be built to deal with the mitigation. And so the lag sucks because, you know, and I'll use traffic as that one example, because traffic has to get bad before it gets better, before we can fix it. And it's just nice to know that the city has been accumulating these funds and has plans to spend them. So that's it.
One noticeable change will be, because we had the Spokane Street project, we also have the prairie improvements on Spokane and Prairie. So, you know, some of the lag on that particular project was to coordinate those two, so that way we can get done at once rather than having 2 disrupted seasons. So, yeah, I mean, you're exactly it. A lot of times you do get your permits before you get the improvements.
So is there a cap on the amount of time you can only accumulate for a certain amount of time, or is it indefinite? I mean,
No, it's 8 years.
obviously. It is 8
Yeah.
years. Okay, that's what I.
8 years from the time you start collecting, you need to expend those funds on some improvement associated with its line item for the
Okay.
capital plan.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody here knows, but, so for instance, roads, we have $8 million contributed from impact fees, but we certainly would have some channel for money to be contributed from property taxes, what is the channel and allocation there?
Well,
I mean, not all of the road work we need done is from new people coming in, right?
yeah, I'm not 100% keen on the nuances of it. I do know that growth pays for the growth improvements. So our capital plans and our transportation plan, we look at using the impact fees to pay for the new infrastructure dealing with growth. The tax collected a lot of times deals with the O&M, operation and maintenance. So when we get our general funds for dealing with that, those are going to chip seal a road or do repairs. So that's where you're doing that balance. Are you growing and collecting enough and building enough tax base to pay for the long-term O&M? And that's where the bigger picture comes in with zoning and city planning and, you know, the city administrator and all facets of the government doing planning for the city.
I'd just be curious to know how the numbers compare. So say the capital, the new capital improvement budget, basically allocation versus the ongoing annual operating maintenance budget for maintaining the existing roads. Any ideas? Is this like,
I don't have anything to add there other than there will likely will be information. I mean, there's the budgeting process. Certainly, those workshops and stuff would help clarify what goes where and how we allocate those resources.
yeah, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. I think that's a fair question. And I think the city does a very good job, John, as you had mentioned previously too, but going out and trying to secure matching funds, some of the grant work and things that they do as well. So, and that's on both sides, both on the maintenance, the operating side, but also on the new project. So, any other questions? Thoughts?
Well,
Okay.
while we're on impact fees real quick, fire impact fees, I know that's not in here, but it's been going through the different cities and whatnot. Is there any update on that you can provide?
I don't have an update on that, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm actually going to have to ask of how we deal with the staff report in the future when we're collecting funds for an outside agency, and I actually don't know our current role in this aspect for that in the future at this point in time.
And I can give a little bit of an update. We are working on, the agency has provided us with draft ordinances. We are working our way through those ordinances. It's a bit of a larger ask than we the process. Basically, we have to put in draft a new title for development impact fees. And so we're going to do that for the fire district, and then we're going to start shuttling some of our impact fees into that title so that all the impact fees are under their own title. So it's more of an organizational aspect process, but it's taking a little bit more time than we originally anticipated. Once we do get those ordinances through, then we also have the agreements with the fire district for collection, and basically with those we will just be we will collect it and turn it over, and it's their responsibility to manage, expend, refund, all of those things. So, and then it'll just be a matter of timing, because we want to make sure that when we're updating our impact fees, they're updating their impact fees, and so that we're doing everything all at the same time.
So we would see like a line item for it then, but we wouldn't see any breakdown of how it was spent. Is that kind of correct? Because you're saying we kind of hold it and then just send it to the,
Yeah, we'll be collecting it on their behalf. So basically, the city will collect it because they don't have a collection mechanism.
okay.
And then we're gonna have an intergovernmental agreement where we collect it and then turn it over to them.
So then would
But
we
then the-
actually see it on the impact fee? So if you're collecting it, right, so the city's collecting it, would we see it on this report along with roads and
We would probably see what was collected.
what was collected, but
And
not a
turned over?
breakdown of expenditures?
But I
from
don't,
that?
and I don't know.
Okay.
I doubt the fire district and the EMS district may provide those to us to include. But again, that's kind of
Okay.
we're sort of working our way through this process because it is a little tricky.
Is it a
Okay.
done deal?
It is that's another great question, because it really is, and it really needs to be countywide, and so trying to get the other jurisdictions on board, and because you can only collect those funds and they can only be expended in your service area, and so it makes it a little bit. We have to be careful about how those funds are managed, so that those funds that are collected in our service area actually go to our service area and where that service area is. Because the service area for the district, if there's a fire station right outside of city limits, it's still probably in our service area, that sort of thing. So it's just a matter of working our way through those agreements.
I think that was his nice way of saying there's a lot of moving parts, and we're trying to
Yeah.
keep everybody
Yeah.
moving at the same pace.
I got
Just my
that.
interpretation. Okay. As far as report, other than informative, we don't have any action item with this, correct?
Well, kick to field, I didn't think there was.
Don't think so.
Said there's not.
Other than us,
There wasn't.
It's not on the agenda, so there is no action
Right.
item because it is not labeled as an action item.
duly noted.
That list of projects, will you?
For what year?
No, it was the one before this where it had like roads and it said traffic control at Cecil and Pole Line.
Okay.
Is that a future project? Or is it a sign they're talking about?
These are all in the past, so, because this is,
Kevin, that one's a roundabout. It's in design right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, cause there's nothing, I almost got hit there today, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the schedule is to go out to bid in 2 weeks
Oh,
on it. They're really, really close.
perfect.
yeah, some of these are expenditures for design. So
That's what I was
sometimes,
curious about, yeah.
so sometimes the expenditure will be like on the design portion of it,
Mhm.
but yeah, the construction, you'll see that maybe in 2022's impact fee, the same project listed, but it would be the
Or
design
a
cost.
different aspect of it.
The construction cost
Sure.
rather than design that occurred in a previous fiscal year.
I didn't need that there.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other administrative or staff reports? None?
I do like the questions, though. They're good. So I do appreciate it. It helps me refine, sharpen my pencil, improve my presentations, kind of look where we're going with it. So thanks for the questions.
So commissioners, let's continue to step it up, play the Stump
The
John
devil's
field.
advocate.
Commissioner comments, anything for the good of the order?
Do we have any updates on the garbage?
Listen, we do.
So it is, I did look into it a bit. It does fall under ITD's jurisdiction, and
Okay.
it's kind of up to them. The other aspect might be the sort of adopt a highway,
Yeah.
but we would have to allocate funding and all of that sort of.
One guy has adopted the highway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if anybody saw,
Yeah.
westbound, I was telling Ross, westbound this weekend, there were bags
I
everywhere.
saw
I did
that.
And
see
this
that.
morning, when I was going in, there was a guy that was parked that was headed eastbound working too. Got a lot of
Guy
work
on
to
his
do.
Bike out there in the rain for since you said something last,
Yeah.
I noticed him the next day. Actually had to make sure it wasn't you. I was gonna stop and help you. And he had like about 20 bags, and the next day he was out there again. He's cleaned up that whole stretch in the middle of the meeting. If you go by there westbound, you'll see it from Atlas east.
So,
I
but-
the other day I really looked,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe how
It's
bad it
really
was. I
bad.
mean, I'd zoom by and see, it's bad.
Well,
but
let's
then
hope
I
there's
was
some
really
media
paying
coverage and
attention,
he
it's
gets
just
some
like-
assistance.
Yeah, maybe just talking about it is enough.
Yeah.
That's all they want is all of us crawling all over the freeway.
I did see an article, I don't know, one of the news sources on Facebook today, something was posted, just a short
Well,
little.
somebody said something, I think, in the newspaper, in the letters to the editor or
Yeah,
something
I
like that.
saw some of that, too.
They
There has been quite a
comment
bit of
about
that,
how
yeah.
bad it looked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that somebody's doing something. Okay. Nothing else, then I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.